Hello and welcome back to Shock and All. Up until now, the guitar has been going topless, and the neighbors have started to complain. Which is impressive when you think about it, because I'm in a basement without any windows. I'm going to have to look into this. I'm going to use this nice piece of Western red cedar here for the top. Just got to get it jointed and whatnot. The first part of this episode is going to look quite a lot like the back because, let's be honest, the top and the back are quite similar. It's about now I should like to amend the statement, you can never have too many clamps, to, you can never have clamps that are too long. It's a good thing I had this small board to fill in the gap. I should also like to note, the rosette ended up bigger than I planned on because I put the tool path on the wrong side of the circle. Hence why it looks a little strange around the edge. I couldn't decide between a Zerakote and a Blackwood rosette, so I made one of each. We're going to go with Blackwood. I decided not to show the milling of that because I figured you'd seen enough circle cutting on the CNC, let's be honest. But what am I going to do with that spare ring? Probably store it for later, right? The doctor says, congratulations! You have twins! You know, how many of you caught the fact that I wasn't actually working on the cedar top for a while there? I'm curious to see. Let me know in the comments. Some of you who watched my previous build series may actually recognize that top. Yes, it's the spruce top that ended up being replaced by the cedar when I screwed up the rosette. Wow, things do really repeat themselves, don't they? Those who fail to learn from their mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, I really should have glued in these little pieces into the rosette before I glued the rosette down, because now the wood glue has filled the holes and made it really hard to get these in. So now I gotta sit here and chip glue out. Hindsight 2020. And in even further hindsight, I should have just grabbed my router with a small bit to clean out most of that. It would have made the job even easier. But nope. So let's talk about this bracing a little bit. This is, I believe it's pronounced falcate. It was either developed or popularized by Trevor Gore out of Australia. It uses laminated braces as opposed to straight braces. Now, he has a similar kind of build mentality that I do, which is I prefer the engineering side of things rather than the, let's just call it tonal mysticism. I like to be able to measure things. And one of the things that this bracing scheme allows is it separates the lengthwise and the widthwise stiffness, which means I can tune things a little bit better. Plus, you really only need the strength running in the same direction as the strings to keep things from imploding. You really don't need as much strength going crosswise. So I'm not such a fan of the X-brace, because when you take pieces off of the X-brace, you're reducing strength in both directions. So it's either too stiff in one or not stiff in another. It's just not ideal. This is a little more of a scientific way of building things, I think. Plus, it's just different. I'm not competing with people who have been tuning X-braces since the day they were born. However, the design has two considerations. The first is you have to notch the braces over the bridge pad. And the second thing is that the braces need to go between the string peg locations, which means you have to have everything plotted out with precision, and you have to glue the top down exactly where it belongs. Because you have to know where those holes go, or you're going to punch right through a brace. It's not like an X brace, which has plenty of room for adjustment, and you can just kind of stick the brace down wherever you need and still be okay. I would definitely not consider it for the faint of heart. And something for the future is that when I go to glue the layers for the braces, I will probably use epoxy as opposed to using wood glue like I did in this case. Also, the original specifications for this use a carbon fiber strand between the brace and the soundboard. I don't really like the idea of doing that from a glue joint perspective, so I'm avoiding it in this case. Subtle variations. The last thing is that I need to change the radius on the two braces outside of the bridge pad. They're a little too steep, and I had to make the layers really thin to prevent them from cracking.
Really?
There we go. We've now fulfilled the quota of glue up mishaps per build. Some of you will also note that I have omitted a transverse brace on this one. The reason is I have a rather large neck block that's going in there, and with the cutaway as well, I just don't see it providing any real additional strength. I'm going to just have the braces go right up to the neck block. I know there was a specification in here for start height for the braces, but trying to find it took a while. I find myself running my hand plane into the center brace, so I'm going to lower it a little bit. An unexpected benefit of this design is I find them a lot easier to carve than the big heavy X braces and whatnot. They're just tapered from maximum height to nothing in a shallow ramp, all the way out to the edge of the soundboard. Really fairly simple. This is also my first time using this bracing method, so I'm consistently referencing the book just to make sure I haven't missed something. I do love the Go Bar deck, although I have to say bending fiberglass poles at face level does get a little scary. Remember how I said I like measurements and repeatability? This setup gives me some of that. I can measure the top deflection under the equivalent string load and make sure that my braces are not too stiff or perhaps too weak. That's what we're doing here. So the target specifications we're after is about a 2 degrees worth of deflection under 15 Newton meters of torque. Why 2 degrees? Because if you let it go more, you may end up with a bellied top. If you go less, it means your top is really stiff, but that also means that it's not perhaps as resonant as it could be. So I'm just marking out the center position of the neck block. This isn't a high precision thing, because I've devised this method for using the CNC to carve the preliminary radius. I will admit though, I did forget to cut the preliminary arch into the sides before I glued everything together. Hence why we're taking such a massive pass. I'll actually do this in 2 rounds. Look how clean that is though. And I don't have to sit and, as some people have described it, turn the bus for hours to get this thing down to the right level. So now that I've cut the rim to the proper height, actually I think I left about 1 millimeter of extra height on it, I'm going to glue the linings in just a little bit proud, and then take it back out to the CNC with the same setup and have it level the linings to the rim for me. Again, it saves me a whole lot of effort. And quite frankly, sitting there for hours sanding something is neither fun nor artistic. So why not let the CNC do the boring work? Again, measurements. I don't know about you, but that sounded pretty good to me. So the next episode, I get to stick my neck out, get it carved off, and then add some rosewood accents to it. Well, I hope to see you there.